Just let me say before Artyo begins, there's some places down here if people want to move and try and sit. At least on the floor down here.
There's some seats too.
And there's even a seat here if someone wants to move. Lectern.
So, I will make 2 points. One on the relevance on Arendt's argument, and another on its internal problem and the internal complexity. So, as for the relevance, I mean, as this has already been said, but I will just rephrase it in my own way. I think that this book is extremely important for the current situation in the world, because the question of evil, well, the originally theological concept of evil, now becomes political and is widely used, well, in international politics, as well as in even more so in the ideological discourses other than the state leaders. We have a very dangerous escalation of international politics, driven by a sort of demonization of one's opponents, right? So instead of a political relationship to another group of people or another state, one chooses a moral, again, some post-theological or even directly theological attitude, and this leads to a new type of war, which is a war of destruction. We return to the concept of the just war, to the medieval concept of the just war. And in this war, not only the war is now led in a much more intense and brutal way than, let's say, 19th century, but also it is asymmetrical, right? So such wars are fought between the big technological international police forces and the partisans. This all is the consequence of this structure of which Arendt speaks, of this demonization of evil. Now, what is this demonization? It consists in the duality of a universal of the fiction of the universal law, international law, universal human rights, as the only framework in which we conceive international politics. And on the other hand, everything that does not fall under these categories appears as exceptional and ultimately, if it's something we don't like, demonic. So it is this double bind of inclusion and exclusion which produces this satanic or demonic evil with which we deal in the international politics. And the danger is, and that's what Arendt is showing, that this attitude is actually reflecting itself into the consciousness and acts of the actual people, right? So it's not only the problem of the international legal system, but it's the problem of individual subjects or group subjects who actually commit this evil. Well, what we call evil. Because they start to treat themselves as non-actors, right? They explain their own actions, for example, by the fact that everyone is doing this, or they explain it by some objective or objectified knowledge, reasoning, as Roger calls it, and this is this leads to the banality of evil becoming not only a reflective concept, but also an ontological concept. It actually exists. So evil does exist. And banality, I think, for Arendt is very good. I think I like this formula. I think it's a very good diagnosis of what evil really is. In this framework that we created, demonic evil is not demonic, but it is banal, and therefore it is even more horrible if it would be demonic. Because the banality of evil, I think, names a space between the inclusion into the law and exclusion from the law. The banality of evil is a gray zone between the simply legal accusation and the monstrous. So this is the importance of Arendt's idea. And very briefly, her argument. I think that her argument, as I said yesterday in the talk, is not simply the statement of Eichmann being not studied in his personality, judgment being inadequate, and at the same time it is not simply the argument that judgment is adequate, after all, because she also says that. And one of the papers that Roger gave to us, Jennifer Kalber, she, for example, unilaterally emphasizes only this last argument, that yes, Eichmann is guilty because he committed this. Yes, she says this, but if she would say just this, then there would be no point to write the book, because she says also the opposite. So her argument is that we have to try to look into Eichmann's personality and story and consciousness. We have to experiment. It's a performative experiment, this judgment. And only when we fail in reaching into the depth of Eichmann's consciousness, of his motives, and of his story, only then we actually have a right to do what the court in Jerusalem did straight away, which is to say, you did this, you are guilty. So that's this complex argument of the book, which is not easily read by most readers, is not understood. Thank you.